To lead us in the pledge.
Bringing up the board, following, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and make me to the God and indivisible, that is very justice for all.
Madam Secretary, if we could have the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato. Director Donato sends his regrets he will not be present this evening. Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
General Manager Knutson.
Here.
Attorney Markman.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next item is a voluntary public roll call. We always look forward, people who are listening in on the meeting, you always look forward to hearing who's listening in, and now's the time to identify yourself if you wish to.
White Fence 3, Jack Cephas.
Hey, Jack, you're welcome.
Thank you.
John Duquesne, AV Mutual Group.
Hey, John, always good to hear from you.
Merry Christmas, George, staff, and members of the board. This is the Roseman News. John Joyce reporting.
Yeah, thank you, John. In fact, we were just looking at one of the papers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we'll move on to item number 5, public comments. Period open to the public. If there's anybody that wish to address the board on items that are not on the agenda, now's the time to do so. Okay, item number 6, adoption of agenda. It's board order 6-6A-1.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I'll move we adopt the agenda.
Director Parrish, you have a motion?
Director Miller, a second.
Director Miller, we have a second. If there's no further discussion or questions on that, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Yeah, motion carried. That'll bring us to item number 7, special item, new business. It's regarding the Avek Financing Authority, and this is something that's it's fairly new, but we've been asked to participate. Metropolitan Water Agency in refinancing, financing some bonds. And at this point, Matt, I think we can turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, President Lane. Good evening, everyone. This is Matt. So maybe before I give a little background on the request being made by Metropolitan Water District, we do have a few folks that are on the line this evening and will help with the presentation this evening. So obviously we have Jim Markman from our legal counsel. Joining Jim Markman tonight is Lolly Enriquez, who's an attorney in Jim's office that specializes in bond financing. Also, we have Michael Engelbrecht with Wells Fargo Bank. He's part of the corporation and investment banking side of Wells Fargo. So Michael's going to go through a majority of the presentation this evening, including in your board packet is a brief memo from staff on page 8. And attached to the memo are some supporting documents, including the presentation that Michael's going to go through this evening.
So Matt, let me interrupt you for a second. I think you should have a motion by the board to adjourn, to recess the board meeting, convene to the special meeting of the Financing Authority before we get rolling here, so that we're meeting as the Financing Authority.
Okay, do we need that at this point?
I think you do, George. It's just a recess and convene to the special meeting.
Do we need to adjourn the present one or recess? What's the
Just
buffer?
reset. Yeah, just recess.
Okay, I don't know if we've done this before, but
I'll move we recess.
okay, we have a motion by Director Mercy,
I'll second.
second by Director Van Dam. There's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
George.
Thank you, Jim. So, before we get into presentation, a little background. So, Metropolitan Water District, who you know is a partner with AVAC on the development of the High Desert Water Bank project. They reached out to AVAC and requested to utilize AVAC's existing joint power authority, the financing authority that was established in 2016 by AVAC. And the reason the financing authority, JPA, was established back in 2016 was to issue bonds for the solar facility project. It was the Krebs bonds, the California Renewable Energy bonds that we received for that project. So Metropolitan, when they first entered into the agreement with AVAC, their plan was to pay for the capital costs associated with the High Desert Water Bank from their cash reserves. As we know, the cost of the project has gone up, some refinements to the project, inflation, other factors increased the cost of the project. So Metropolitan has decided to go out and issue debt in the amount of roughly $180 million that will be used for the capital costs associated with High Desert Water Bank. Now, there's some benefits to Metropolitan that Michael will get into as to why they are requesting to utilize AVAC's financing authority to issue bonds. But that is the request of Metropolitan Water District. So we've talked about this a couple different occasions with the executive committee. The executive committee recognizes the great partnership with Metropolitan Water District and the development of the High Desert Water Bank, but also is keen on trying to avoid any risk to AVAC in utilizing the JPA to issue this new debt. Metropolitan made it clear that there's going to be no obligation of AVAC to repay the debt. No impact to AVAC's existing ratepayers, no impact on the credit rating of AVAC or our future bond capacity if AVAC ever needs to go out and issue new debt. So we talked through all that. We got the assurances from Metropolitan. Included in your board packet is a draft of the indemnification language that Metropolitan provided. That was one thing the executive committee wanted to make sure that Metropolitan provided that to AVAC. So they did provide that sample language that will be reviewed by legal counsel. And we can get into more of that as we go through the presentation. So that's a brief introduction. And this evening we wanted to make sure the full board was aware of the ask of Metropolitan Water District. That's why we invited Michael Engelbrecht. And we'll go through the presentation and then we'll follow it up with a motion and concurrence from the full board that staff and legal counsel can continue to work with Metropolitan Water District on preparing the appropriate documents. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Michael. And
Matt, are we finished with 7A1 and going to 7A2?
No, we're still on 7A1.
Same one, okay.
Yeah. So we'll go through the presentation and have a discussion, and then we'll move on. So take it away, Michael.
Well, thank you and good evening. Thank you for allowing me to join this meeting via Zoom remotely. And thank you for the opportunity to present and answer questions as we move through the presentation. We put, I think there are 4 slides together, mostly just to illustrate everything that Matt said. But one of the first questions that the committee asked was, why would Metropolitan make this ask of AVEC? And what is the advantage to Metropolitan for issuing bonds through the Avec Financing Authority? And my task today is to walk through that and make sure that we're all on the same page on why they made the ask. And as Matt said, there is no impact to AVEC. There is no financial impact. There is no obligation. It's an accommodation to Metropolitan as a partner. And our job here is to discuss, or my role here is to discuss why that's important to them. So I thank you for the time. Holly, would you be able to put that up on the screen? If it's on your screen, it's definitely not on mine. There we go. Thank you, Holly. As you can see here, we've outlined really in short talking points why this is important to Metropolitan. And I'd like to start at the top left. It really is the financial impact on the ratepayers of Metropolitan and the advantage that this particular transaction would give them. So Metropolitan's board has 2 financial target ratios related to debt service that they've set. And you can see there the debt service coverage, their board target is 2 times, which applies to direct debt service for bonds directly issued by Metropolitan. So for every $1 of debt, their goal is to raise $2 of revenue so that they have 2 times debt service coverage. Fixed charge coverage, and fixed charges are fixed operating and maintenance expenses. So for example, like the fixed charges on the state water project contract are fixed charges. And for that, they put a ratio of 1.2 times. And the 1.2 obviously means that for every $1 of debt service, an additional 20 cents of revenue is required to cover it. And these 2 metrics, these 2 ratios or target ratios are really to address rating agency concerns when they assess and place the credit ratings. And you can see to the right, Metropolitan's existing credit ratings from Standard & Poor's AAA, which is the highest, and Moody's, another rating agency, is AA1, which is just a half a step below a AAA. These ratings, by the way, are higher than our federal government's right now. And the reason this is important to Metropolitan is that they have outstanding today $3.7 billion of debt of bonds outstanding. And their annual debt service, in fact, we put their fiscal year ending 2025 debt service is $303 million. And so it's about $300 million a year that they generate in debt service that they pay. And so if you think about the mechanics of this is the reason they would like to utilize the AVEC Financing Authority is if the financing authority issues the bonds secured solely by the capital payments made via as required in the High Desert Water Bank agreement, those capital payments are paid as O&M payments. So this would be a fixed O&M payment for Metropolitan, which would fall under the rating agency category of a fixed charge coverage. Now, it gets paid before their debt service, and that's why it's a lower charge. But it would be the same as when they make their payments to the state water project and for these bonds here. So it's a stronger credit. It gets paid in a higher priority. But the difference is the coverage. And what we tried to do here is look at this transaction from Metropolitan standpoint on a per acre foot charge. That table at the bottom, you can see the projected MWD or Metwater annual debt service. Now, $11 million is a very conservative number. It's probably going to be closer to 10, but interest rates move around. So in 2024, the budgeted water sales for Metropolitan is 1.54 million acre feet. So doing the simple math, which is what about the only math I can do, it turns out to be $7.14 an acre foot just for the debt service. Now, if this were to be direct debt for Metropolitan, which they're issuing again first quarter next year for their particular new money, their debt service coverage would require 2 times coverage. So they're looking at an additional $7.14 an acre foot to generate that coverage, which would make the aggregate a little over $14 an acre foot. But however, if AVEC is amenable to issuing these bonds to the financing authority, paid solely by Metropolitan, that coverage factor goes down by 80 cents on the dollar. And so now you're looking at 1.43 an acre, $1.43 an acre foot to make fixed charge coverage. And so the total, I guess, charge would be, or impact on the rate case would be $8.57 an acre foot. And that reduction of $5.71 an acre foot, and again, these are estimates, is impactful to their ratings as they're going into, for those that follow Metropolitan as a fellow state water project contractor, as they're moving into increased capital plans and other activities that will cause them to raise rates. And so this dynamic here, this projected $5.71 an acre foot reduction in the rate case is an opportunity for Metropolitan to lower the cost to their ratepayers, to be just very conservative in their progress as they look to continue down their quite extensive capital improvement program. So that's what's driving them from that standpoint. Holly, if we can go to the next page. Again, some very, very simple graphics. What we've lined up here to make crystal clear, not only to us and Metropolitan, but also to you, is if you look at the top graph there with the boxes, the existing high desert water banking agreement, as you know better than I do, AVEC sends an invoice to Metropolitan for the capital improvements made and the money spent. Metropolitan currently reimburses AVEC. That money is sent to a commercial bank as it's written in the contract, and then the money then goes to AVEC as a capital reimbursement. This proposed transaction, if you look at the bottom boxes there, those arrows flow the same way. AVEC would, Metropolitan would sell bonds for the $180 million. That money would be sent and deposited with the bond trustee. AVEC, as usual, would send to Metropolitan the same invoice for reimbursement of capital expenditures. Metropolitan would require the bond trustee to send money from the bond proceeds to AVEC. So that green line to AVEC remains the same. There are no arrows coming out. There is no money being paid by AVEC. It's the same. It is essentially the same flow of funds. But additionally, Metropolitan, instead of making those capital payments to AVEC, because the capital payments in sum are all with bond trustee being held for reimbursement to AVEC, they would be making capital payments in the form of debt service payments to the bondholders. So again, no money leaves AVEC. Money only goes in under the same agreement, under the same mechanics, under the same flow of funds. And that's something that's crystal clear to everybody in this proposed transaction. So much so that when AVEC and their counsel asked Metropolitan for an indemnity agreement, They were quick to provide one that we think indemnifies AVEC for any kind of future financial obligations related to this structure, which is really, really the key here. Holly, we'll go to the next page, please. So one of the things that we put together was really a table here of roles and responsibilities. And you can see the tasks list here on the far left. You can see that for AVEC, the financing agency, or the AVEC Water Agency Financing Authority, there's one responsibility, and it's to approve the issuance of bonds for the purpose of this financing. Now, if the board approves allowing the staff to move forward and work with Metropolitan, the entire financing would come back to the full board for this very purpose, is to approve the documents, to approve the offering statement, which will have Metropolitan's name very clear that they're the obligor. So the board will get one more chance to take a look at the details of this financing. But you can see that as an obligor, Metropolitan is the sole obligor, and they paid bond debt service directly to the bond trustee. So those monies never come through AVEC. Investors would never look to the agency for debt service payment. The legal documents, the offering statement, working with the rating agencies, the pricing, closing of bonds, and even the continuing disclosure, a question that Teresa was persistent in asking. Thank you, Teresa. All of those fall under Metropolitan for this purpose and moving forward as long as the bonds are outstanding. And we wanted to make this very clear to everybody that that's how these types of transactions work. The offering statement in February, and again, this is a very loose agenda schedule, rating agency meetings for Metropolitan, but again, we would have to, this entire financing would have to come back in front of the AVEC board for approval. And at that point, agency counsel will have an opinion on it, make sure that it's exactly what it's supposed to be, with the indemnity included. And then, by the end of the third quarter, Metropolitan is looking to price and close the bonds. And again, those proceeds will go into the bond trustee and be held there for reimbursement for AVEC. So, Matt, I may have left something out, but I think that's a very high-level overview of what we...
Michael, a lot of information, and that's, you're very good at what you do, and we appreciate it, and I think we'd open it up if anybody on the board has any questions or concerns. This would be a good time to express them.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Director Miller.
So on our end of the financing authority, how much staff time is it going to take in addition to the regular staff time? Teresa's time, obviously.
Yeah, it'll take some of Teresa's time, maybe a little of my time coordinating with Metropolitan, and then legal counsel's time as well. And what we heard from Metropolitan when we talked to them, they don't want this to impact AVEC at all. So they're willing to reimburse us costs associated with any staff or legal time associated with this transaction. Yeah.
And then we would just, until the bonds are established, we would continue to receive our payments as usual.
Yeah.
Until that goes into action.
Exactly. Yep. There'd be no interruption to the capital payments for the High Desert Water Bank.
And one question, it would come back to the board, I believe it was in February, I believe.
Probably in January.
January?
Yeah, where we have to first amend our agreement between AVEC and Metropolitan Water District. And then it would come back to the Finance Authority in February to authorize the issuance of bonds.
We're committed at that time, once we pass it. If we pass, what we have in front of us today, does this pass anything?
Michael, can you answer that?
Director Lane, I think your question, if I heard it correctly, was if the board decides to move forward, are you obligated at that point? The answer is technically no. But if the board does approve moving forward, Metropolitan will begin moving forward to work on the financing and the scheduling and coordinating of all of this, with the understanding that, as long as all of the objectives are met and the indemnification is in place, that there, wouldn't be an issue in the future. So that, I think that's something to consider, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, if there's no further, questions from Michael, James Markman or legal counsel, do you have any comments, questions, concerns?
The only comments I have are that the board, when this first came up, the committee was talking about no financial peril to AVEC. And the way this has been constructed and explained, and we will see that the paperwork follows the model, we don't see a financial peril to AVEC. It'd be almost impossible to believe AVEC could ever become the party that has responsibility to make the payments on the bond servicing, nor do we feel that this is going to do anything negative or at all to AVEC's bond ratings, nor will approving this bond by this financing authority remove bonding capacity from AVEC. So we've looked at it every way we think we could, and we continue to recommend it to the board.
And sorry, this is Lala Enriquez from Richards Watson. I just wanted to add that when it does go back to the board, you'll have all the relevant bond documents before you, and the indemnification language should also be presented for board approval at that time.
All right. Thank you, Lolly.
And Matt, you recommend this, is that correct?
I do, yes. Recommend this, and if there's no more discussion or question on item 7A1, we can move on to 7A2, which is where we're asking for a board order to authorize staff and legal counsel to proceed with reviewing all the necessary documentations prepared by Metropolitan Water District.
Okay, we'll leave item 7A1 if there's no further questions by the board or staff. Move to 7A2. Following what you just said, is there anything further you want to add to that?
Nothing at this time. I just want to echo what's been said over and over. I know we have a few of our AVAC customers on the line this evening. I want to make it clear to the AVAC customers that, the board has been very cautious at looking at this to make sure there's no risk or financial impact to our customers.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody listening in, if you have any comments, you're free at any time to make your ideas known or ask questions. Yeah. Okay, 7A2. This will probably, if we hear nothing further, if the board has any questions, doesn't have any further questions on this, motion.
Mr. President, this is Keith. I'll make a motion. We approve Financing Authority Board Order 7A1.
That's actually 7A2. That's my typo.
Oh, okay. 7A2.
Okay. Motion by Director Dias. Do we have a second?
Mr. President, I'll move on the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And there's no further discussion or questions. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
George Lane.
I'll abstain. It's not because I'm not for the agreement, but we've dealt with Wells Fargo for a number of years. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that finishes up that item. So I think we need to adjourn, reconvene for the regular meeting. So need a motion to adjourn. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct. That's correct.
We have a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Regular meeting. Madam Secretary, get a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, that'll bring us to item, Water Master and Groundwater Stewardship Committee. We're going to change direction here now, and as item 8A1, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
All right. Thank you, President Lane. Director Paris, being the chair of the committee, would you like to say anything on this item?
Actually, I'd like you to take it over, Matt. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So included in your board packet on page 20 is a brief staff report, and attached to the staff report is the MOU that we're seeking approval by the board this evening for. So this MOU is between AVAC and the Antelope Valley Water Master. As you know, recent events that has gone on with the Water Master and the administrator, with the Hallmark Group choosing not to continue providing that service to the IAV Water Master. So AVAC volunteered to step up and provide the admin role on an interim basis. And what this MOU does is kind of memorializes that relationship and responsibility between the two parties. So this MOU was prepared by Craig Parton, the general counsel for the Water Master. It was reviewed by myself and Jim Markman, our AVAC's legal counsel. Jim had some good comments on the roles and responsibilities or tasks that are attached in Exhibit A. And the tasks are pretty straightforward. It lines up really well with what we, AVAC, provided a couple years ago when we were the administrator for the Water Master. So our approach is very similar to what it was previously. Probably the biggest change is I will not be the administrator, but Peter Thompson's going to play that role for AVAC and the Water Master. Being that I'm an alternate board member, I can't play both roles. So Peter's going to take on that task, and then the support staff for Peter is going to be Angel, Patty, and Teresa on the finance side. Also, Pam Clark is going to help out a little bit. So we feel like we have a good structure, and the MOU does a good job documenting the relationship between the two parties. So with that, staff is recommending that the board approve this MOU so that it can be presented to the Water Master at their January 24th meeting. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a timeline in here?
No, we don't. There's no term in here. It just provides some notice, 30 days notice from either party where it can be terminated. So we didn't want to put a defined term, provide some flexibility for the Water Master in case things slip with providing a full-time administrator or permanent administrator.
It looks like a lot of thought was put into this.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Very detailed.
Matt, this is Director Van Dam. Did we look at trying to get off of that 950 assessment, or have we haven't got there yet, have we?
No, we haven't got there yet. So, as you know, the Water Master approved the $9.50 per acre foot of assessment for 2024. So, admin staff at this point, we're going to take over come January 1st, and that will be part of the equation, is the assumption of $9.50 per acre foot.
Is it Peter had experience on this before when he was with Palmdale?
Yeah, and Peter was the assistant administrator, so he was back up to me when I was administrator. So he's well aware of it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Probably give us a month or two. Okay. Anybody listening in, would they have any comments or Questions? Okay, it's a pretty major step, but I think it's the correct step at this time. Does the board have any further comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rob. I move approval of Board Order 8A1, and for the board's knowledge, I have reviewed the MOU and made some observations to Matt, and have reviewed it again and believe it's one that we should approve.
Okay, we appreciate that. Yeah, we have a motion. We have a second.
Director Miller, second.
Director Miller, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further questions or discussion, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Then the other items, again, we have a special meeting, so there's probably very little comments on the additional items, but director's reports, item 9. Move on to item number 10, attorney's report.
No report, George.
Item number 11, request for future agenda items. Item number 12, closed session. We have a need.
We do have a reason to go in closed session for 12A. It should be fairly brief.
Okay.
What, guys?
Believe I'm still conflicted out on that
Yes,
one, so
that's
I'm
correct.
recusing myself.
Yep.
Okay, so motion would be in order.
The president, I'll move on going into closed session.
Second.
Director Miller, and we have a second. There's no further discussion. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato, George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. We'll take a 5-minute break.
All right.